Welcome to the Finding Purpose LiveCast, where we feature authors, leaders, and speakers of purpose on a live platform to have truly authentic conversations. And now your host, Davin Salvagno.
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Davin, I'm great, man. Thanks for the platform today.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. You're so used to giving the platform to so many other people, so many other authors, leaders, thought leaders, that I want to have the same opportunity to give you the platform to share your wisdom and insight to help so many people today.
Well, that's gracious. I'm honored. Thanks, man.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So today we're here with Scott Miller, and I'm excited. Scott is the author of two amazing books, which are right behind me. Everyone Deserves a Great Leader and Management Mess to Leadership Success. He's also the executive vice president for FranklinCovey. And many of you probably recognize that name from Dr. Stephen Covey's work and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But Scott has his own journey. He's got some amazing wisdom and insight and just a really cool story. And we've only known each other a short time, but he's just a very real, genuine, authentic, passionate, and most importantly, purposeful human being. So Scott, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. I'm excited for what people are going to hear today.
I just wish my wife was on this to hear these accolades. I think she might challenge you.
Well, you know what you do is take this recording, put it on like an old cassette tape, and put on her ears while she's sleeping, right?
The last thing she wants is to listen to my voice more, so that won't work.
That's awesome.
Especially having been quarantined with me for 3 or 4 months now, right? On multiple podcasts a day.
I think all of our spouses are tired of us saying, hey, I'm recording. Can you keep this? Can you keep this out of the, I love seeing your boys run around actually that room that you're in now.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine the challenge that this has been for you.
It is highly likely that one of my 3 sons is going to run behind me with their underwear on a sword, being beat with another sword with their other brother. So just, if they see that behind me, you know what? I'm just like you.
That's awesome. That just adds to the realness and the rawness.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about, your kids, your house, your family, your wife, let's do a proper introduction to who you are as a person. Tell us who Scott is, a little bit about you, and then maybe just jump into your journey of your background and how you came to be who you are and what you're doing.
Hey, my pleasure. So I'm 52 years old, live here in Salt Lake City, Utah, just about a block from the Capitol behind this window. I've been married 11 years to Stephanie. We have 3 boys. Let's see, Wentworth is 6, Smith is 8, and Thatcher is 10. Thatcher is named after my hero, Margaret Thatcher. And we're very blessed with 3 healthy boys. Unfortunately, all of them have my personality, so my wife is outnumbered by a factor of like 12 to 1. I've had a almost 25-year career in the FranklinCovey company. Dr. Covey hired me about almost 26 years ago. He passed about 8 years ago, the result of a head injury in a bicycle accident, but I learned a tremendous amount from him. I'm happy to share some today. I'm actually from Orlando, Florida, believe it or not. Spent my first 25 years in Orlando, worked for the Disney company, the Walt Disney Company. After 4 years there, they invited me to leave, which is the nice way that Disney says, get out, you're fired. So here I am, about 26 years old, smart and young, but immature and kind of a bit of a professional wreck. And the FranklinCovey company comes calling. They recruit me out to Utah. Now get this, I'm a 26-year-old Catholic single boy from Orlando moving to Provo, Utah, right? That's like being Jewish and moving to Vatican City, right? Probably good for like a sabbatical, but I don't know, 25 years. So it's been a great run. I've been a sales professional, sales leader, sales vice president, was the chief marketing officer for 8 years. And now I'm privileged to, like you, host a large podcast. I've authored several books, several more coming out, speaking, writing, speaking virtually now. Which is not great for the income or the marriage, but you know what? We're all in the same boat, right? And here I am landing on your podcast today. It's an honor, and I'm happy to share any insights on my own professional journey, always kind of like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, right? That's why I wrote this book called Management Mess to Leadership Success, because I realized there's so many leadership books, like tens of thousands of them, and they're all most of them are kind of academic, ethereal, written from the 40th floor, and they're valuable. But I wanted Davin to write one that was kind of real and raw and relatable, from an apparent expert in leadership, from a leadership company, to say leadership is not for everyone. Not everyone should be a leader of people. And I'm a bit of a pariah in the industry, but I believe that to be true. Not everybody should be a commercial airline pilot. Not everyone should be an anesthesiologist. Not everyone should be a leader of people. But if you are, there's certain challenges and principles you need to follow. And I've spent the better part of my career kind of learning those, being humbled by those, and now sharing those with people who can avoid the same, potholes that I stepped in.
That's so good. And we often talk about if you want to go through a desert filled with landmines, you want to be the first person going through it or the last person going through it. And what you've been able to do is say, listen, I've kind of walked through these areas. Don't step there. Don't step here.
Yeah.
Hey, so-and-so stepped there, and this might be the way to go. And that's what great leaders do. And your work is fantastic. I love the book. I love what you've done there. One of the greatest things that I love that you continuously do through all of your works, not just the books that are on the bookshelf behind me, but also through your platform, your podcast, and the studio that have there with all of the books and the TV, is that you are consistently being the spotlight for other people. I've shared this before. Great leaders choose to be the spotlight rather than to be in the spotlight. And you live that out. I see it on social media. I see it in everything you do. It comes very through authentically in your works. So I appreciate that you continue to be the spotlight for other people.
Davin, that's gracious of you. It's a tension, isn't it? It's a delicate balance, especially when you work in an organization. In fact, one who may not be a high trust organization, where you have to promote your own self or you'll get looked over for the next, job promotion. I think a lot of people fall victim to corrupt cultures where you have to be your own promotion, your own producer, director, and star, and that their culture doesn't allow you to be part of a team and to have this sort of reciprocal lifting up of others. I've been very fortunate to work in a very abundant culture at FranklinCovey, a very high trust culture where we're taught and encouraged to be part of a team and to lift others up. And from that comes some obvious benefit. Not everyone's had that same benefit. So I don't mean to be a Pollyanna. And you and I mentioned off air that, I didn't come to this out of the womb, right? As I was younger, I was a fairly scarce person. I was generous, but I thought that I had to, kind of eat or be eaten. And as I matured and made a lot of mistakes and was groomed by a lot of wise people, I became more abundant, more appreciative of the reciprocal nature, or for that matter, just having an unabashed intent to help other people. And of course, from that comes, great benefit as well.
Yeah, there's a true selflessness about you. In fact, you shared.
That's gracious.
Well, there is.
Hey, hun, log into this podcast. The timing is right now.
Do you need me to say it again?
No, she walked by and gave me a harumph.
No, yesterday you shared on social media. You said, I shared this off air as one of my favorite quotes of probably the year. You said, I've learned to separate the opportunists from the selfless. And I know that you're not in any way attacking opportunists there or demonizing them. But there's a genuine difference between opportunists and selfless. And you, again, that's just the realness of who you are.
Thanks. That's, again, very, very generous. I came to that probably from, being perhaps too selfish in some areas of my life. I've had a lot of feedback. I think one of my biggest ideas I would share is none of us are as self-aware as we think we are, right? And I don't think we seek and naturally curate feedback in our lives. And when we do, we're posing and we're pretending. Let's just get to the bad stuff to get to this validating stuff. And as I have made seeking, craving feedback my brand, I've learned a lot about what it's like to work for me, what it's like to be married to me, what it's like to work on a project with me. And I think a lot of us aren't as aware as we think we are. And as I have become more aware of what it's like to be at a town hall meeting or share a stage or to share a podcast, I try to moderate my naturally kind of dominant style, Davin, and be a little more selfless in turning the spotlight on others as others have on me.
Yeah. And while that awareness is so critical, I know you quoted this in your book, Management Method Leadership Success, Dr. Covey's famous quote of, we judge ourselves by our intentions, but we judge other people by their perceived behaviors or observed behaviors, or another way to say that is by their actions, right? We judge ourselves by our intentions, we judge others by their actions.
That's right.
And a lot of people are completely unaware or unconsciously unaware of how they're coming across. They don't mean to be opportunists. They don't mean to be selfish. They truly might intend to be selfless, but just comes across that way. So that awareness piece, and really when you think about the space that we're in, right, this concept of leadership thought process, being a thought leader, an author, someone working on personal professional development, our main purpose is really actually to help people to become self-aware, to bring out that potential, to help them see what they haven't seen before in their blind side, or maybe to see things in a way that they didn't see before, so that they can come across more genuinely, authentically, and effectively. And your work does that. And so that makes sense that that's your natural thought process, philosophy, because that's how you.
Well, I think it's become more natural. I don't think it was, my natural process early on. The second book I was privileged to co-author, Everyone Deserves a Great Manager, the 6 critical practices for leading a team. The first practice, as you know, is develop a leader's mindset.
Yes.
This was a watershed to me. A leader's mindset, as you know, Davin, is to get work done with and through other people. Let me repeat that. A leader's mindset is to get work done with and through other people. And once you come to own that paradigm, that belief system, it changes everything, right? You turn the spotlight off of you onto them. You are more patient. You're more celebratory of diverse experiences and skill sets. You calm down, you coach, you mentor, you forgive, you pre-forgive. Because you realize that your job, your contribution, your legacy is to build capability, is to build capacity. That you don't have a paradigm of, well, if I want it done right, I'll just do it myself. Because when that's your paradigm as a leader, you then hoard all the projects, you don't delegate, and then you become a cancer in the organization because you become jealous and you become insecure and you punish others. And now you're wondering, why are you the person working 80 hours a week and everybody else is out at their daughter's soccer game, right? Or taking their PTO, and now you just have a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you develop a leader's mindset that your job is to build capability in other people, to get work done with and through other people, it changes the way you view relationships. Can I take it a step further?
Absolutely. You're on a roll.
I think the 2 most profound things I've learned from my almost 5 years at the FranklinCovey company. We're here in Salt Lake City, founded 40 years ago, are 2 things. People are not an organization's most valuable asset. That is some HR bunk. People are not an organization's most valuable asset. Rather, it's the relationships between those people are your ultimate competitive advantage. Because Davin can have a master black belt 6 Sigma license and Scott can be a Rhodes Scholar from Oxford. But if Davin and Scott can't get along, can't compliment, can't forgive, can't pre-forgive, our company doesn't need us, right? It's the relationships that we develop that are fundamental to the speed, the trust, the results to our clients. It seems like a cliche, but it's a profound difference, is the idea of how valuable relationships are. The second profound insight I'll share from Dr. Covey. He wrote this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's often misquoted, Davin, by the press as the 7 Habits of Highly Efficient People. They just get it wrong because they're so fast. No. There's a difference between being efficient and being effective. Yeah. One's not better than the other. They're just fundamentally different. One more minute on this, because I think this has been the biggest learning I've ever taken away in my life. You can probably tell I'm a fairly passionate, not according to my wife, according to others, charismatic person. I have a lot of energy, right? I can fatigue people. I'm a very productive person. I get up at 3 a.m. most days. I write my ink column. I write my books. I'm a dad from 6 to 8. I'm a executive officer from 8 to 6, and I'm a dad again, and I get a lot done. I'm that annoying neighbor that gets up at 5 on Saturdays. I'm at Home Depot by 6. The flowers are in my car by 6:30. They're planted by 7:30. Yard rake by 8:30. Yard mow by 9:30. Car wash by 9:30. 10:30. I'm ready to go. I'm a very productive person, and it's actually been very valuable in most areas of my life. That productivity is an efficiency. The problem, Davin, and I'll bet some of your listeners and viewers can relate, is efficient people like me bring that efficiency mindset into our relationships. And you can't be efficient with people. You have to be effective.
Yes.
And that's a fundamental mindset shift that took me like 48 years to learn. That my best skill, my best talent was wrecking my brand in the workplace. It was wearing on my wife. It was driving my mother-in-law not to like me, and on, right? Regardless of how productive I had been in life, I used that same tool at Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas morning or racing to church, or you get it. Dr. Covey said this, which I think is prophetic. He said, with people, fast is slow and slow is fast. So for those of you that are listening, that are leaders, where perhaps an efficiency mindset has worked well for you, make sure you're deliberate about that in your texts and some emails, in your social media, taking the garbage out, washing your car. But check that efficiency proclivity when you're in meetings, when you're having lunch, when you're developing relationships, and move into an effectiveness mindset. I'm sorry I hijacked that piece,
No,
but I think it can help a lot of people.
what you said there was so helpful and profound that I'd want you to say it all over again if we had time. In fact, I might just take that 5 minutes of brilliance and loop it when we get done with this, because everyone needs to hear that. We especially in the organizational space and leadership, we want to be efficient. We live in an ever increasing, fast paced society. And if you're not keeping up with the speed of society, you're behind. And
so well said.
So we're constantly being drawn towards efficiency. And it's almost like the further that we gravitate towards efficiency, the less effective that we become with people, which is why there is so much turnover. Before COVID, we had one of the greatest times of turnover in American history. I mean, the average lifespan of someone in a job went from 30 years to 10 years to 5 to 18 months.
It's so true. Right.
And the reason why is because there was a deterioration of relationships, because while leaders were becoming more efficient to keep up with public demand, they were becoming less and less and less effective with their people, which is what translated into turnover.
You and I are going to work together because we see the world exactly similarly. I hope we get to collaborate, because you're exactly right. People don't quit their jobs. They quit bad bosses and corrupt cultures. And people also don't quit leaders who love them. And that sounds like a little bit of a maybe lovey-dovey Covey term, but people ask me all the time, Davin, Scott, why have you been at FranklinCovey for 25 years? Well, it's not from a lack of opportunity outside the firm. It's because the chairman, Bob Whitman, he loves me. He cares about me. He loves my wife. He loves my boys. He cares about my future. I will leave at some point. I'll always have some association, but my boss loves me. And he takes his time and he listens and he invests in me after 25 years. And so he continues to re-engage my mind and my heart. That's another HR-ism all bunk, is that leaders don't create engagement. Leaders create the conditions for others to choose their own level of engagement, high or low. Especially right now in COVID, right? People know if you're checking on them versus checking in with them. And that's a paradigm shift, right? Is vulnerability. This is a new leadership competency. Everyone's got a mess. I got a mess, you got a mess, Chris, Adam, everyone, Sarah, we've all got messes. And when as a leader, you're willing to own your mess, talk about it, teach from it, instruct through it, it gives license to others to own their mess and sort of move towards success. I think gone are the days, to your point, Davin, of this hierarchy, this chasm, this distance between the front level leader or front level employee and the senior leader, right? People want to relate to their leaders. They want to know that they're fallible, that they're human. Doesn't mean there isn't hierarchy and there's not an incumbency on everyone to do their best to be held accountable. But I think the reset after COVID is going to be obviously virtual. It's going to be a whole different level of engagement people choose to have based on their culture and their leadership. There's going to be a vulnerability that everyone's been reset in terms of what their normal was. This is not profound or an epiphany. It's just kind of a reminder of what we know. It'll be interesting to see how that longevity contracts or expands based on the new workplace, the new style of leadership.
Well, in the conditions for everything that you just said, when you look back, when you're in the middle of a mess, so to speak, you really can't make sense of the mess. But if it's truly being something that's being formed together by design, you can always look back and see the purpose for every stage of that mess. Take any building, anything that you're constructing, when it's not finished, it looks like a mess. But when it's done, you could look at pictures of the process and say, okay, well, that's why that beam was there. That's why this was there. That's why when you look at the conditions of what we're living in today, you just talked about vulnerability. Vulnerability is not a new concept. It's been around forever. The difference is we now have people giving a voice to vulnerability that are finally being heard because the conditions are right. People like Brené Brown, who gave a voice to vulnerability and choosing to dare greatly and to be real and authentic and raw, their voice, her voice, the conditions for that to be amplified are unique in this setting because of a generational shift and dichotomy that hasn't existed before. You had baby boomers and Generation X, like myself, that we were so driven by efficiency, by money, by trading time for money, that we didn't have time for vulnerability. We didn't have time for real, genuine honesty. We just needed to get things done. And so I sit down with business leaders and corporate leaders and HR leaders all the time. And the number one thing that they're always asking for us and for Purpose Point to do for them is, how can you get our teams to perform better? How can you get us to perform at a higher level? And I always challenge back and say, is that truly what you're looking for? Higher levels of performance? And they'll say, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, truly great leaders don't ask, how do we get our people to perform better? They ask, who are we helping our people become? And they slow down and they invest in the development of their people to help them become the best possible version of themselves in the role that they could be in, to unleash their capabilities. But the entry to that is providing an environment, fostering, that's another HR word that kind of got off the rails, fostering an environment, not creating an environment, fostering an environment that allows for vulnerability, that allows space for failure, that allows space for mistakes, so that people can learn from those, get back up on the bike after they fall, and continue to move forward. And that's always been around. The difference is with millennials and Generation Z now not only entering the workforce, but accounting for more than 50% of the workforce, they demand that. They demand vulnerability. They demand authenticity. They demand genuineness. And so if you haven't changed your mindset to meet the demand of the new generation of the workforce, you're behind. And so that's why everything that you just said is so powerful, because the conditions for effective leadership and what you just talked about have never been as perfect as they are right now.
This is kind of a mutual admiration society, because that last 4 minutes is why your podcast is exploding, because you're exactly right. I don't think leaders were given the permission to do that, in the 70s or 80s or even the 90s. This is a new leadership imperative, right? Where your job, like you said, is to allow people to become their true selves and to find their voice. Dr. Covey was a bit ahead of his time on that, right? His 8th habit was to find your voice and inspire others to find theirs. You and I have a lot of the same network and friends. Liz Wiseman wrote this book called Multipliers. Changed my life. It's probably my favorite leadership book ever published. And Liz Wiseman, in my late 40s, inspired me to realize the difference between how we as leaders are accidentally diminishing people and how we are multiplying them, right? That a leader's role is not, Davin, as you know, to be the smartest person in the room, not to be the genius, but to be the genius maker of others. Yeah. I read this book when I was 49, and I stepped down from being the chief marketing officer. The CEO asked me to stay 3 times. And what I realized was that I was talented, sufficiently talented, but I was jealous. I was insecure. I kind of had imposter syndrome. I intentionally didn't hire people who I thought were more talented than I was, for fear they would eclipse me, for fear I would be exposed as not knowing SEO or marketing automation systems or Google Analytics. And I felt like I needed to be omniscient in everything. No, sorry, newsflash, right? 48, 49 years old, I finally realized, no. My job is to be a talent magnet, right? Recruit and retain people who are palpably, noticeably smarter than me in their areas, step back, groom them, cut through the bureaucracy for them, and then take it a step further to pollinate them throughout the organization. Don't just hoard them around me, but to put them in the Taipei office, put them over in operations, move them out to the Atlanta office, move them over into some other divisions in the company, so that 18 to 2 years to 3 years becomes 5, 6, 10 years, because they can accomplish their career inside of our company versus needing to go somewhere else. I'm hoarding them. That was a huge learning for me. That's why I stepped aside, because I needed to let somebody else come in and take the division to the next level. I actually thank Liz Wiseman for that insight. I strongly recommend her book, Multipliers.
That is great insight, because our ego can sometimes be the biggest, not can sometimes.
I just going to
Our
correct you.
ego
is
the biggest barrier to unleashing our potential and fulfilling our purpose. You know, the John C. Maxwell's, the Ken Blanchards, the Dr. Stephen Coveys of the world, you know, would all champion the statements of, first of all, surround yourself with people that are stronger than you in the areas that you're weak.
And be comfortable, right? And celebrate that. Yes.
Celebrate that. Yeah. And then second, hire those people to do what you need them to do that you can't, and then get out of their way. And we often allow our ego to get in the way of either surrounding ourselves with those people, or once we surround ourselves with those people, if we're blessed enough to be that magnet that attracts the right people to fill the gaps that we can't fill, we often then get in their way by allowing our ego to get in the way.
It's a leadership philosophy that too often stays in the pages of books and isn't lifted into our lives, right? If I had to do it over again, when I became the chief marketing officer, again, I hired great people. They were sufficiently talented, but I didn't go out and check my ego and go find the world's best talent and be not just comfortable with them being smarter than me, but like celebrating that as this sort of talent magnet. I did the opposite. I hired people who I could control, who were gracious, who were kind, who were competent enough, so that earlier in my career, I could control them and take the spotlight. It was later in my career I realized, oh my gosh, I'm doing a disservice to our company, to our shareholders, to our investors, to our clients, to these people. I learned that the hard way. And again, I thank Liz Wiseman for that. I'll tell you the next big idea that I learned is that next to, I would argue, next to system, strategies, and culture, process, a leader's number one job is to recruit and retain key talent.
Absolutely.
I think number two is to give people feedback on their blind spots. It is the biggest gift you can give someone, to move outside your comfort zone, to have high courage conversations, to discuss the undiscussables. You can make a transition in someone's life where they keep repeating these self-defeating behaviors, career after career, job after job, marriage after marriage, bankruptcy after bankruptcy. If you can demonstrate a balance of high courage and high consideration, high diplomacy, sit someone down, declare your intent. Can I role play it with you?
Absolutely. Love role
play.
Hey,
Davin, thanks for coming in today. Hey, I want to have a bit of an uncomfortable conversation with you, but I want you to know my intent is to help you build a phenomenal career here at FranklinCovey. Davin, I can see a great career here, and I might even use some of the wrong words, so if I need to be given a do-over, I might ask for that. But Davin, I want you to know that like me in the hot Detroit summers, you might be building up a resistance to your antiperspirant and breaking through your deodorant. It happens to all of us, and before anybody might notice it, I just wanted you to know that I really care about your brand here, and you might want to change deodorants because, again, like me, sometimes we build up resistance, and I would hate to have there be any embarrassment. That's it, man. I love you. You're killing it. What's said in here stays in here. Go out and keep doing what you're doing.
You know,
Go ahead.
I really should have worn an undershirt today. Is it showing?
No, not at all.
That was good.
Yeah, you get the point, though. That can be about your self-awareness, about your collaboration skills, your ability to come to work on time, your ability to offer credit to other people, your ability to take responsibility for your own actions, whatever it is. It's that role play that I might have gotten about a B- on that is such a gift to people. And I think a lot of leaders aren't willing to have those conversations. And then what happens, as you know, is they neglect the problem and it becomes bigger. But what also happens is these people continue to repeat these self-defeating behaviors because no leader had the courage to do it in a delicate way. You can deliver hard news in a soft way, But as a leader, then you lose the respect and the confidence of all your team members because they see you neglecting other problems, and it's bringing the culture and the morale of the team down, and they quit you because they want to work for a leader who has the competence and the confidence to build a high character, high courage, high consideration culture. And you know, one of the biggest challenges is people like me, I have no lack of courage. I'll talk to anybody about anything. And with that, you can verbally eviscerate people, right? You can damage their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-worth. So I have to be careful about balancing my courage with consideration, with diplomacy. Of course, the opposite is true. You have leaders that are so shy, so careful, so retiring that you leave the meeting, you scratch your head, and you have no idea what the meeting was about. They go back to their boss and said, yep, Davin's on a performance plan one more time and he's out. No, the person never heard that. It is that careful calibration of speaking clearly, speaking deliberately, speaking with courage, but doing it in a way that leaves the other person not just intact, but perhaps even better off than when you entered the conversation because they know your intent is to help them. And then you won't go out and say, yeah, I talked to Davin about his BO. We'll see. No, you would never share that with somebody else, right? You would keep that confidence because you don't gossip. Let me share a final thought from Dr. Covey. I'm hijacking your podcast.
You're good. No.
Dr. Covey said the biggest cancer in organizations is gossip.
Yeah.
If you want to be a transition figure on your team, stop talking about people differently when they are absent from when they are present. He said, you build trust with those who are present when you are loyal to those who are absent. He called it being loyal to the absent. As a leader, you have a chance to literally transform your team, your division, your platform, your culture, your industry by today deciding you are never going to speak about anybody ever again. Your father-in-law, your neighbor, your rabbi, your leader, the receptionist differently when they are not standing in front of you as if you would if they were right there. This is a high standard. But as a leader, you need to model that. Be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic.
And then he would add, let me go first. I love that.
Let me go first.
That's
That actually was my ad.
Oh, that
was my ad.
Oh.
It was actually.
That.
No, that was Dr. Covey said, right? Be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic. And to your point, I wrote a blog yesterday and said, you know what? Let me go first. And then I gave some accolades to some people who had built my career, and my success is completely on the shoulder of these nearly 30 people that I've worked with the last 20 years.
Well, and that piece that you did yesterday was very, very powerful. And again, a great example of being the spotlight. And I want to go back to the role play that you did, which was very good. I'd give it a B+, not a B-.
That's nice. Thanks.
But there was 3 things that you said that you kept on saying the word intent. And then again, it goes back to Dr. Covey's quote of we judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their perceived behavior or their observed behavior or their actions. And so when you think about any conversation that you have, if you start with what the intent is, if you come from that place of heart and you did that, I want to have a conversation. And the reason why I want to have a conversation with you, Davin, is because I can see a very bright future here for you, FranklinCovey. The next thing that you conveyed was what you could see that maybe they couldn't see for themselves. And that's always the mark of a great leader. I know you talk about managers and leaders, right? You have one, everyone deserves a great manager. You have another book, that Management Mess to Leadership Success. It's often been said that the difference between a great manager and a great leader is managers see people as they are. Leaders see people as who they can become. And so what you did in that role play was you very clearly shared with me what your intention was, but then you helped me see what you saw that maybe I didn't see. And you cared enough about that being a possibility for me. You cared enough about the potential that you see in me being unleashed to help me get out of my own way, to share some helpful feedback for me that would help me get to where you see that I can go. And that Davin, is so critical.
You're on fire. I mean, that's probably the biggest insight of this whole conversation is, absent facts, people make stuff up, right? Absent you declaring your intent, someone will ascribe intent to you, right? We have to fill the holes with our own experience. One of our co-founders, Blaine Lee, said something I think is, again, prophetic. He said, nearly all if not all, conflict in life comes from mismatched or unfulfilled expectations. And I'll tell you, I think a big takeaway from this conversation, hopefully for your listeners and viewers, is declare your intent. Use those words, right? My intent is to help you land your project on time. I do not want to delay it. I have 3 questions that I need answers to. And as soon as I get answers to them, I'm going to be your biggest champion, and I will help you achieve your project. I was very clear on my intent. That person can't go away and say, Scott's trying to hijack me. He's trying to grind it to it. No, I told you my intent is to help you land this project. I just need 3 answers to 3 questions, and then we're good. I think too often we assume what others' intent are. We assume what their agenda is. Oh, because everybody's got an agenda. Even the finest people on your podcast, they've got an agenda, right? All of us sometimes have nefarious or self-serving agendas. That's called being human, not being a bad human. And the more you can surface that, the more you can be vulnerable and authentic and true and just kind of open kimono, right? Quite frankly, I'm scared about this project because I'm not sure my skills are really what they need to be. And I'd love to learn more and help you. I wonder if you might help to, coach me and mentor me. That's a great conversation, right? It's just tell the truth.
As you were saying that, and you were talking about declaring your intent, and the biggest gap sometimes being that the intent is not clarified because people assume. And then the thing that you said later in the last segment, which was about gossip being that cancer, and how can one of our family's favorite movies that we watch every year is White Christmas. We love White Christmas. We watch all the time. But one of the things that makes that movie so great, which is built into the very actual story of the whole thing, is what we just talked about. I wrote an article a couple of years ago, and it was entitled "Be a Bob," right? And I started hashtagging everything: "Be a Bob, be a Bob, be a Bob." And I think I even included a segment within a chapter of my book, and it says "Be a Bob." And what "Be a Bob" is Bob, who is the main character, right? Played by Bing Crosby in White Christmas. There's this moment where he's at the resort, and there's no spoilers here. I'm assuming everyone has seen White Christmas.
It's a great movie.
Please get out from whatever rock you might be living in to see White Christmas. But
you got to watch it in the winter. You can't watch it in the summer.
You got to watch it in the winter. Otherwise, it's not special.
Right.
But if you know the storyline, if you didn't, you'll catch this when you watch it. There's this moment where they're at the ski resort that his former general now owns, operates, and retired at. But the general's unfulfilled because he's not living out his purpose as a general. It's not fulfilling what he was created to do. And so he's just eager to get back involved somehow in the army. And so there's a scene where mail comes his way. They're sitting on a bench, and the mail comes, and he's excited because he thinks it's a letter that he's going to, be able to get back in. And he opens the letter. It's a letter of rejection. And Bob, in this moment, who used to be his captain sitting there, sees the expression on his face, sees the disappointment. It triggers something within his heart, and he wants to do something about it. So in an instance of not being an opportunist, Scott, and being selfless, he chooses to sideline all of his plans and comes up with this amazing plan to get the entire old gang together, the whole battalion, and have them leave their families on Christmas to come up to the resort.
That's great.
To restage an experience that would make him feel like the general.
You're giving me chills.
Right?
You're giving me chills.
So it's selfless.
It is.
It's not an opportunist. But here's the plot twist in the movie, Scott. The person who's running the resort picks up the phone mid-conversation and listens in to only part of the conversation.
I knew you were going here.
Makes an assumption that is wrong about the intent that Bob had. Right. And then she chooses to gossip about it, which then ends up destroying a relationship temporarily.
And they cast her so well, but she played that part so well.
So well, right? But it was her misunderstanding, her assumptions of the intent, her then gossiping about it, and painting Bob as an opportunist rather than as a selfless person who truly wanted to help.
Look at you tying it together. Look at you bringing a ageless movie into this conversation and tying. You got skills, bro. You got skills.
I appreciate that. That's what I was thinking as you were talking about that. It's just such a great example of we need to declare our intent.
Yeah.
We need to not be gossips because we never know what the true intent of someone is.
And our families too, not just in organizations, right? With your families too. I know I see my wife, who I admire in many areas of her life, one of 5 siblings, and they all tend, this is a good group of people, but they all tend to talk about each other to each other. And none of them pick up the phone and call the brother or the sister, but they all tend to talk about each other. And these are great people, highly accomplished, highly educated. But honestly, it's one of the gossipiest families I've ever met. They love each other, they protect each other, they help each other, but they never pick up the phone. And and Pete doesn't call Tim. Those aren't the names, right? But Pete calls Maria, and Maria calls Tiffany, but they never pick up the phone and call each other.
Yeah. And there's that. I mean, that's a whole there's could be a whole nother book around that, right? There's a whole mindset and spiritual warfare around that, and everything that we could talk about why we choose to talk about someone rather than talk to someone.
Well, it's cowardly.
Right? It is cowardly.
Cowardly, right?
Because we don't want to actually have the conversation.
Right. It takes you moving outside your comfort zone. It takes what it does. It takes you suspending your mindset and make sure you have the facts.
Yeah.
It takes you being empathic and listening to the other person's scenario and understanding, right? We seek to usually respond, not to understand. And it really takes you kind of assuming good intent, right? I think a lot of us tend to assume bad intent. We'd like to get into things, and we like sometimes to see other people's pain and help them process their pain. It's pretty tacky.
Well, it is. And for a couple of reasons. One is because it often makes us think about ourselves and our issues less, right? We end up comparing ourselves. So when we talk about other people or we call out their issues or their imperfections, right? And want to take the speck out of their eye versus taking the plank out of our own, it makes us feel better about ourselves.
Hey, that was Old Testament. Man, you got Old Testament. You got White Christmas. I mean, this is like a therapy session. I love it. Are you an MD?
The first one is free, Scott. The first one's free. I'm not an MD, right? But when you think about that, the other piece too is depending on our personality style, we often may also want to just fix the situation when we really need to listen. There's a great, I'm sure you've seen this. Have you seen the YouTube clip? It's not about the nail.
Oh, I have. It's a little bit sexist now, so it's been kind of canceled, but I've totally seen it.
That's true.
Yes. You
5
got it.
years ago, you should watch that. Now it's
right.
a little bit, right? But that couple on the couch is my wife.
Right?
No comment.
No comment.
It is. A lot of times she might be struggling with something and I just want to fix it, right? Maybe there's a nail in your head. Maybe if you just take the nail out, right? I love it. All my sweaters are snagged. I mean,
I know.
Right? And she's just like, listen, I just need you to listen. And that happens a lot. I want to fix things and she just wants me to listen. But I think there's a great lesson for us to learn from that clip, despite
so true. It is worth Googling. Put your gender sensitivity aside for a moment. It could easily be a man or a woman, right? It's the same thing. You can listen. In fact, most of us do listen with good intent, which is to solve their problem, right? My wife comes home from Orange Theory and in the olden days and would have some interpersonal issue going on there. And she didn't want me to fix it. Want me to whip out my leadership expertise on her. She just wanted me to validate her, right? You can listen to someone and not agree with them.
Absolutely.
You can validate someone and not understand it, right? It takes a selfless heart to kind of get into their mind, understand what their field of experience is. And I think it's counterintuitive for most leaders, Davin, because we're trained to fix things, right? Solve problems, peel the onion, and get to the root cause. Those are great skills. They're not great skills in relationships.
No,
getting to the root cause and peeling the onion, you're always on your own agenda, your own timeline, your own field of reference. It's counterintuitive for most leaders because we're paid to fix it.
Yeah. I remember the very first time I learned about root cause analysis and the 5 whys, and I came home that day and I tried to apply it to my wife. She was like, how am I feeling about this? I'm like, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? And after all, she called me, she's like, will you stop treating me like one of your employees? Right. And I realized that wasn't meant to be used in a relationship.
No.
That was a lesson to learn in that moment. But I think it's so true. If we all learn to listen more, you said something there about I can agree with you. I think one of the biggest things today, one of the biggest misperceptions is that if I don't agree with you, I don't accept you. And that could be not further from the truth. I can accept you and not agree with you. I could accept who you are. I could accept your perspective. I could accept how you see things. I could accept how you feel things. I could accept your belief on things and still not agree with those things and still accept and love you. And a lot of times the hard part of being a leader, of giving feedback, of stating intent and all of those things is if we don't do it in the right way, and I'm going to be very limited on what I say here because of the current circumstances we're in our country and a political year and all those things, is that if we don't communicate things with the right intent, and if we don't communicate things through love and in a way that says, I accept you, even though I don't agree, it will come across as I don't accept you and demonizing or whatever the case is. Right. And so we got to be very clear about our intent, very clear about our ability to accept someone without necessarily agreeing, and then having maybe vigorous conversation, but not violent conversation, and meeting people where they're at, not always trying to solve the problem or fix them, but listening to understand. I mean, one of the 7 habits, right?
Right. Number 5.
First to understand,
right.
And then to be understood. I mean, it's so simple. It's right there. We can,
but it's so counterintuitive, right?
So
because for all of us. Me too. Yeah, me too.
So good.
This has been fun.
This has been. And I know that was only supposed to be 30 minutes. It was 45, and I could sit here and talk all day with you. But maybe we'll do a second episode because we could just continue to go on and on.
So when are we launching our book? When does our mutual book come out? I forgot the title. What's our title of our book again?
Well, we should think tank on that.
I think we should.
Salt Lake City, and it's a great airport to fly in, surrounded by.
It is.
So the next time
it is gorgeous place.
We'll just have to do dinner and come up with, what the name of that book is going to be.
I look forward to it.
I look forward to doing some work together. But as we wrap up here, and as people are listening to this, I want to kind of give you the last thoughts here for anyone listening to this today, because the title of the live cast is Finding Purpose at Work. And I think one of the things that you found in your journey is you found your purpose. You found your purpose, obviously, as a husband, as a father, in your work in thought leadership and helping people to see things and think about things differently. And you articulate it so well. But there are so many people, and maybe I'm wrong, by your facial expressions, you're like, have I found my purpose? I'm not quite sure. So, and maybe you haven't, but it seems to me that whether you realize you found it or not, you're living in it because you're very, very good at what you're doing. And so I want to give you the last word of either wisdom, insight, or encouragement for those listening today that might be struggling with this concept of this all sounds great, but I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know how this applies to me. What would you have to say to encourage them?
Well, I might recalibrate your compliment to me. I think I'm uncovering my purpose. I'm 52. I was single till I was 41. And so for me, I don't know what my purpose was early in life. Go to Europe more, drink more champagne. I don't know. I mean, play more tennis. As a single guy, I'm not sure what my purpose was. I think now that I have 3 kids, I think my purpose is to be provider in many aspects, right? To my wife as well, too. I have 4 people dependent upon me for a lot in life. I take that purpose very seriously. I'm a religious guy, so I think my creator has a purpose for me and I'm uncovering it. I don't always agree with it. Usually when the boys are arguing and I want to rip my hair out, I resist that purpose. But my advice to your listeners would be, don't be shamed or feel shamed by those who have found their purpose. Kind of annoys me sometimes. People project their purpose. And I'm like, I'm 52. I'm not quite sure I know what my purpose is. I am discovering it. I am uncovering it. So resist the temptation to be intimidated by others who have the sense of clarity of purpose. Don't let that impact you. Don't let somebody else's dream for you or someone else's criticism of you or their lie about you instruct your purpose. It's a journey. Uncover it. And perhaps it comes later in life. And who says your purpose is defined in your 20s or 30s? It might come in your 60s or 70s, right? Be kind to people, be loyal to the absent, stop gossiping. And I guess finally, I repeat this, what I said is declare your intent in every situation. including at Thanksgiving with your father-in-law. Your intent is not to offend him. Your intent is to help him cut the turkey so it feeds 40 people. You get the point, right? And know when to be efficient and know when to be effective.
So good. And a great
Bam!
summary of 45 minutes of just power.
Hey, and watch White Christmas when it's like late fall, early winter.
So good. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. Have you read Halftime by Bob Buford?
No.
You would very, very much enjoy.
All right, I'm
that
taking
book.
a note. I'm taking a note.
Halftime by Bob Buford. He makes the case that we're all on this journey of finding purpose, and that people reach this point of halftime in their life, and it's usually sometimes between 35 and 55, and it's not always in that parameters, but it's usually in that time. And he simply defines it as this: we're wired to chase and achieve success in our life. That's how the world wires us, but we weren't created to do that. We were created to pursue and achieve significance. And so he says many people realize that it doesn't matter how successful they become, trips to Europe, whatever it is, there's always something missing. And what's usually missing is the significance piece. And he makes this statement: you could be successful and not be significant, but it's impossible to live a life of significance and not be successful.
Wow.
And it's a great thought process book of unpacking the journey, which you just so eloquently put. So it doesn't surprise me that you're 52 and you're still unpacking and rediscovering the journey. You'll very much enjoy that book. But
I appreciate it. This free therapy session has been so valuable. Pencil me in next week sometime, doctor. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you, Davin. Thank you.
The pleasure has been all mine. It truly is. I mean, love it. Know the difference between effectiveness and efficiency, stating your intent. So many valuable nuggets on this. And I can't thank you enough, Scott, for pouring yourself out in this podcast today, for pouring yourself out in your books, for the impact that you're making in the lives of others, and for the life of significance and purpose that you're leading.
Everybody watch for the launch of Davin's and my book. We're still in the midst of it, but it's coming soon to a bookstore near you.
We'll let you know when that is. Awesome. Well, today we are here with Scott Miller, again, author of many great works, including Management Mess to Leadership Success and Everyone Deserves a Great Manager, Executive Vice President for FranklinCovey. And you can follow Scott on LinkedIn. You can find him obviously on his website where his book, you can find his book wherever books are sold. And of course, you can catch this recording of this live cast at purposepoint.com and on our YouTube channel. We hope that you will join in next time for more episodes of the Finding Purpose LiveCast. And I implore you, intrigue you, and encourage you to follow Scott, because he shares and drops nuggets of wisdom each and every single day that, if you're still unpacking and undiscovering your purpose as he is, will help you fulfill that journey.
Thanks, Davin.
Thank you. Thanks for listening today. We'll see you next time. Until next time, live purposefully.